Today, we're going into the F word. We're going to face fear, the stage fright. If you listen to the first episode, you're probably thinking, but Lauri, you said we were going to shift the conversation from the fear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to things like transformation and having our impact on the planet. Shifting the conversation doesn't mean pretending that the fear isn't there. It doesn't mean shoving it in a closet. It does not mean suppressing it. We're going to shine a light on it. Let's be compassionate with ourselves. The way out is through, it's not suppression. And some of the other public speaking approaches out there are keeping you in the fear in order to sell. And the fear kind of cycle going back around that people are stuck in is often unconscious. So we're going to shine a light on it so that we can move through and harness our power and things like that. I would love for you, if you're driving, don't do this. Imagine, but don't close your eyes. Take a moment and imagine that you're in one of those networking meetings where every single person around one of those big tables introduces themselves. And as you imagine that, notice what you notice. What sensations are there? What thoughts, emotions, energy, physical sensations are you experiencing? And now let that one fade away like a scene in a movie ending. And imagine that you are sitting in front of a green video light, getting ready to shoot a Facebook Live or a video for your website or a TikTok video. And as you imagine that, notice what thoughts, sensations, physical and energetic, you experience. What's happening with your breathing? And now let that scene fade, and in its place, now imagine that you're walking out onto a stage with a red carpet and a spotlight on you and a sea of faces looking at you. And notice what you notice: sensations, thoughts, breath, energy. And let that scene fade into the background. And take a moment to go back in time. Maybe you had a high school debate club disaster, or a high school report, or a college verbal report, or a performance when they made you do the school play. And notice what you notice with that. What thoughts, what emotions, what energy, what physical sensations. And then take a big breath in. And if you had closed your eyes, open them up. And let it out with sound. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about sensation frustration and fight or flight. We use fear for a whole lot of things. Some of us are actually in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, one of those things. Some of us are actually in sensation frustration. Either way, whether we're teetering on or in fight or flight, or we're experiencing what I call sensation frustration, the goal is to not suppress it, not try to shove it in a closet, not try to fight it. Notice I did not make the title of this episode Fighting the Fear. It's to teach ourselves, body, mind, heart, soul, amygdala, that there is no bear, that we don't need to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And sometimes it's not even fear. We make a mistake by calling something fear that is actually sensation. A few years into my business, I realized that every face that I was seeing in the crowds that I was doing this work with were thinking that they were the only one with sweaty armpits, sweaty palms, maybe even some legs shaking. And everyone was thinking that they were the only one experiencing those sensations: a heart beating faster, breath attempting to deepen, And everyone out there was trying to suppress it, in part because the world was telling them to calm down, which I'll get to a little bit more later. Suppressing it doesn't work. That saying, what you resist persists, is out there for a reason. Fear is visceral, and so is sensation. On the flip side, sometimes we're we're calling it something else, and it's actually fear in disguise. Resistance, distractions, excuses, procrastination. I got to find the perfect outfit. My hair sucks today. The slides aren't quite right. Something about speaking and a camera light brings up all of our stuff. Turn out that little green laptop light or put a video camera inches away from our face, and our inner critics go berserk. They point out everything that they think is wrong with us that we must fix before we could possibly be on camera. They even came up for me today. I'm getting my hair cut in a few hours. I was like, oh, I shouldn't shoot it today because my hair will be much better later. It wasn't the best night's sleep. Have I had enough water? The script, the outline that I have isn't completely perfect. I should wait. I can't even remember all of those inner critic soul sucker thoughts that came out in my mind. 6 years ago, my soul suckers, my inner critics, came out in droves the day before a photo shoot. They told me that I had bushy eyebrows and bad hair and that I needed to lose 10 pounds and get a whole new wardrobe. Looking back, none of that was true, which is in part also what helped me to realize this toilet bowl that I was swirling around today. And in the midst of the inner turmoil then and today, I realized that all of that soul-sucking criticism was just a smokescreen. Their endless, distracting critiques were really the soul suckers' clumsy way of trying to protect me from one of the things that I long for the most, that we all long for the most: being seen. If I'd let my soul suckers take charge back then, I would have canceled the photo shoot. Instead, then and today, I listen to a different voice inside. My soul. She whispered, "Love yourself exactly as you are. It's time to be seen." Back then with the photo shoot, I put my soul in the driver's seat and I stepped into the spotlight, the camera light. Being seen is one of our deepest human longings, and it also scares us to death. Enter the soul suckers. It's my name for the inner critic because they suck the soul out of our voices in particular. Their job is to protect us from vulnerability. Speaking, especially speaking soulfully, is a vulnerable and, by the way, a courageous act. So the soul suckers come in kind of like if the original Lost in Space, there was an android on the original Lost in Space who would wave his arms and go, "Danger, Will Robinson, danger, Will Robinson." That android is like our soul suckers, our inner critics and our protectors and those kinds of parts inside of us. Their job is to scan for danger and to attempt to keep us out of dangerous situations. And danger and vulnerability are incredibly similar. They attempt to get us to calm down, and everybody's inner critics and soul suckers and protectors in the world are then perpetuating the advice of calm down. Stop trying to calm down. Great speaking is not calm. Great speaking feels more like a roller coaster ride than sitting on your couch watching Netflix. It's vibrant. It's alive. There's an energy flowing. My first coach, Susan Carlisle, used to say, "Darling, I'm not the least bit interested in your comfort." 15, 16 years later, I agree with her. The vast majority of speakers and speaking programs out there are focusing on being comfortable. That's numbing. either what you resist persists. So the harder you try to suppress all that sensation that you're feeling and calm down, the stronger it gets, like pressing the lid on a Jack in the Box or something like that. Or you are able to suppress it, and then you become incredibly numb. Comfort and charisma, aka presence, don't really coexist. Comfort doesn't make you soulful. Sir Laurence Olivier, one of the most talented, most famous actors that ever lived, experienced quote unquote stage fright every night before going on stage. And he was one of the best in the world. Steve Kerr, an award winning head coach of the USA Olympic team and the NBA multiple time champion Golden State Warriors, often uses the phrase, an appropriate level of fear about champions. They can lose or risk losing when they don't have it, and they win when they do. Fear is a name we give to sensations like a rapid heart rate, the sweaty palms, the increased adrenaline. We feel these things when we care about something. Excitement is another term for those same sensations. It's all about how we look at it, or it's a lot about how we look at it. You know what else describes those very same sensations? Charisma, radiance, presence. There's an assistant professor of business administration at Harvard Business School named Allison Wood Brooks, who studies things like the intersection of emotion and cognition and behavior. And much of her research is focused on anxiety, which my translation would be the worry about the worry of doing a thing or the fear of doing the thing. It's one of the most common emotions that we all experience in workplaces, sadly. Potentially why so many of us leave and start our own, and then it shows up with a different head. She conducted a study and then wrote a paper where she had three different groups: people taking a math test, people singing, and people speaking. And each of those three groups were broken down into two groups. One told to repeatedly to tell themselves to calm down. I'm freaking out. I'm so nervous. I got to calm down. The other group within the three main groups were told to repeat, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I get to take this math test. I'm so excited I get to sing this song today. I'm so excited that I get to speak in public. And they scored them. And in each of those three groups, the get excited groups scored higher. Now, some of those are subjective, some are totally objective. Math is completely objective. You either got the questions right or you did not. Singing is a mix of subjective and objective. There were people in the crowd deciding which singers did they like more, and they were testing for pitch. And all of the singers in the Get Excited group scored higher on both of those fronts. They were more pitch accurate, and the people enjoyed their performances and rated them as more charismatic and having more presence. And guess what? In the speaking category, the speakers were all rated higher who were saying to themselves, I'm so excited I get to sing this song. If you want to Google her paper, read her entire paper, it's called Get Excited, Reappraising Pre-Performance Anxiety as Excitement. It was published by the Journal of Experimental Psychology in 2014, and it is readily available. You can Google it and read the whole thing online. And I want to shout out a special thank you to my friend and colleague, Janine Kay of Giving Voice, for being the first person to introduce me to Allison and this study. What I want you to know is if we're not resisting it, if we're not suppressing it, if we're not ignoring it, what are we doing with the fear? We're going through. The way out is always through. That includes things like giving it a little bit of space, like we did at the beginning, reframing it, calling it sensation, or one of the ones that has worked the best for me and a lot of my clients is to call it something like nerve excitement or scare excitement as a way of befriending the sensation, because there is a part of us often that goes, I'm just no, you want me to call it excitement? No, that's not how I grew up thinking about it. And that part digs its heels in more. So if we call it scare excitement or nerve excitement, we're honoring both parts of ourselves. We can stop being at war with ourselves. And once we stop being at war with ourselves, the magic can begin. Each feeling, each sensation that we experience is often sent to us to guide us, to be harnessed. Our sensations are connected to our prana, our chi, our life force, our radiance, our charisma. They're also intimately connected to our intuition. And intuition is the language of the soul. Through our intuition, through all of that energy, we can sense the vibe in the room. We can feel what others feel physically, emotionally, energetically. So instead of fighting the sensation, befriend it. Learn to embrace it. And from embracing it, I promise you, you will eventually learn to harness it. When we create from what we see and sense, we align with our audience's hopes and fears and dreams and our own. Our audiences will feel seen and heard and felt. They'll open up more fully. And because we're sharing us, they will trust us and open up more fully to the journey of transformation. And I'm going to share 3 words you can take them away from this episode and use them and repeat them in your head like a mantra. Intend, align, invite. Intend, align, invite. Intend, align, invite. By intending, I mean focus on what you do want. What do you want for them instead of focusing on what you don't want? Imagine that you're going river rafting or skiing down some slopes, and you're spending the whole time going, I hope I don't hit a rock. I hope I don't hit a rock. I hope I don't crash into a tree. Please don't let me hit the rock. Please don't let me crash into the tree. Notice how that feels in your body. You're probably starting to experience more of the sensations that we label fear. You might be feeling yourself getting tighter and tighter and tighter and more closed down rather than more and more open. Now imagine that you're going river rafting or skiing down those slopes, and you're saying to yourself, today I want to have a wild, adventurous ride on this river. Or today I want a smooth, flowy trip down these ski slopes. And notice how that hits your body differently. And the speaking version of that, instead of, I hope I don't say the wrong thing, I hope I don't make a mistake, I hope I don't set anyone off, thinking, I want a wild, adventurous ride for them. I hope they feel alive after I talk. I hope they trust themselves more at the end of my speech. I hope they're more excited or more open and leaning in when I'm done. Same kind of difference in the body. It helps us tap in more to our souls, to focus on our big vision, why our souls want us to speak in the first place. Intend, align, invite. Align is aligning our body, our breath, and our energy with our most expressive selves. We were born this way as babies. We came into the world and we could cry or laugh. And before we even had words, people on the other side of the house could hear and feel our voices. Our arm hairs might stand up on end at the sound of a baby crying or a baby laughing. And then the world told us, don't be too big, don't be too much, don't be too emotional, don't take up too much space. And guess what? Fear is one of the emotions. And in order to stop all of those emotions, to not be too much of all of those things, we suppress. So when we align our body, our breath, and our energy, we're opening them back up to that kind of expressiveness. We're remembering and relearning. In the body, it means opening our heart, new habits, new old, remembering how we came in as babies. Babies have open hearts. Creating new habits, relearning old habits, and neural pathways of being open and connected to other people. Another Harvard researcher, Amy Cuddy, gave a TED Talk 2014, I think. And I may be misquoting her, so this is not going to be perfect. She said something like, and the title of the talk was something like, with our bodies, we can change our minds. The longer quote is something like, our bodies can change our minds can change our behavior, and our behavior can change our outcomes. The body changes hormones as part of that process. So when we open our heart, we add to the intention that we set, and we become more expressive. Breathing is breathing life into the experience. One of my favorite quotes is, fear is excitement without breath. It rings really true. It's attributed to a lot of different people. One of them is Robert Heller. Somebody told me once that things come in waves, or there are trends that are happening. So if you look up fear is excitement without breath, you may see 3 or 4 different names. And it's possible that every single one of them said it. And the reason the internet can't figure out or align on who said it first is that there's a truth to it. I'm not alone. I can't tell you how many voice and speaking coaches get giddy at that quote. I did 2 auditions 10 years apart. And in one of them, I did not have breath. I was not breathing life into the experience. I was not converting fear into excitement with my breath or my mind. And what happened in the first one is that I stepped out, I saw the crowd, I attempted to suppress my fear, I suppressed my breathing. I saw someone that I knew, and I immediately got tight and looked away and tried to just power my way in a numb state through the audition. I got very few callbacks from that one, and even less getting cast. 10 years later, I had started doing this work myself, and I noticed what was going on in the room. There was tons of sensation. Mine and everyone else around me felt like they were in fight or flight. Amygdalas were triggered everywhere. Soul suckers were going crazy. They were in a Tasmanian devil kind of tizzy, wanting to plow forward and get it over with from a numb place. And it takes practice. It takes a deep level of faith in the middle of feeling that from your own inner critics and soul suckers and everyone around you, to breathe. And this time, 10 years later, when I stepped up onto the acting audition equivalent of the red carpet, I saw the same person that I knew. And this time I breathed in, thinking, oh, there's Janice. And oh, there's my former student next to her. And I actually looked them right in the eye and opened my heart, like I was saying, excited to see them, to share these monologues with them. I was grounded and connected. And you're not supposed to do this anymore. But they actually posted top auditions from the entire weekend. And mine was one of them. And I got callbacks and I got cast. Now, I'm not the first speaking coach out there to tell you to breathe. And I've even seen a speaking coach making fun of those of us out there asking you to breathe. There's a reason we're saying it again and again and again. You may not really deeply be grasping what we mean when we say breathe. We don't mean the gasping, panicked breath. There's a Mary Oliver quote, "Are you breathing just a little and calling it a life?" We're not talking about that breath. We're not talking about the just being alive breath. There's also a Rumi quote, "There is one way of breathing that is shameful and constricted. Then there's another way, a breath of love that takes you all the way to infinity." We're talking about that breath when we're telling you again and again and again to breathe. There's a Mark Nepo quote that says, "There's an amazingly thin lining of breath that's in us all. And then beneath that lives our impulse of heart, our true and genuine response to all that we encounter. Above it lives the reflex of our emotional survival, the quick twitch of our patterning. It seems our ability to be authentic and free can't touch us until we breathe our way below the quick twitch of our patterning." Throughout our lives, we've been taught to breathe in a way that supports the reflex of our survival and the quick twitch of our patterning. That's on a normal day. And then you add the high pressure, high stakes, important to us moment of speaking. And we're absolutely, most of us, until we learn to breathe that deeper, nourishing breath, going to go to the reflex of our survival and the quick twitch of our patterning. Years ago, when I was teaching theater, I was teaching at a community college, lots of people about my age. And I'm teaching a voice class and I'm talking about this breathing for actors. And one actress in the class, just a little younger than me, is looking at me perplexed, confused. It was like a combination of respect and resistance. "I trust you, but you're talking crazy. I trust you, but you're not making any sense." Because, like, I'm sitting here and I'm breathing. If I weren't breathing, I would be dead, which is true. The Mary Oliver, just enough to be alive. And there were like 38 people in this class. So it took a while for her to go from listening to me talking about breath for it to be her turn to work on the breath with her monologue, with me guiding her, helping her below the quick twitch of her patterning and into the deeper, more nourishing breath. And all of a sudden, she takes a breath, which I love. And what she said next was, "Oh my God, Lauri, I don't know how to breathe." Yep. She knew how to breathe the quick twitch of our patterning, the breathing just a little and calling it a life. From that moment forward, from that gasp practically, she learned her way back below the quick twitch of her patterning to the breath of love that takes us all the way to infinity. Intend, align, invite. Align is aligning body, breath, and energy. Another way that we protect ourselves is by keeping ourselves small energetically, especially if we were told as children not to take up too much space. Children should be seen and not heard. There is enough space for everyone, including you. Keeping our energy bubble small also protected us from real life dangers. Everything from the high school bully, an overbearing parent, or heartbreak, or something even worse. And over time, keeping ourselves hidden can become an unconscious habit. After all, if people don't notice us, they can't hurt us. If the bear doesn't notice us, they can't hurt us. If we're in a state where our bodies and our amygdala and parts of ourselves, the parts that are in charge, are feeling like the audience is the same thing as a bear, we need to choose to be seen. Being seen begins with a choice. We talked about that in the first episode. And then to expand our energy, to wrap our arms around the audience with our voice, our sound waves, and with our energy. It's like we're hugging the audience with our energetic arms. And when we expand that energy bubble, all of that sensation that we might be feeling will stop feeling like it's too much because it's not in a pressure cooker anymore. We're giving it more space to exist. When we do that, we trust ourselves, we invite more flow, we become like an air conditioner for the emotions and the vibe that are happening in the room when we pair that energy with that intention. And we create a space where our audience feels safe enough to delve deeper, to go further, to have a richer experience of transformation. The fear of being seen is not talked about enough. One of our deepest human longings is to be seen, to be heard, to be felt, to be understood, to belong. That comes up when we're standing on a stage or in front of a green camera light. We deeply fear being rejected. We don't want to put ourselves out there first. So we find ways of going half in and we hold back out of that fear of being rejected because it hurts. We crave it. It feels so good when we get the connection, but we fear that rejection. We're taught to hide our true nature in order to fit in. So we go half in. How we hide? Sometimes it means that we don't give the speech. We don't speak up in a meeting. We don't go to the networking meeting. We don't date. We don't shoot the episode of the podcast. And other times it can be much more subtle. Other times we hide, we protect ourselves from that fear by putting on a happy face, an emotional mask, not a medical or N95 mask like we've become all too familiar with in the last few years, an emotional mask of being fine or okay or happy or all pulled together. We might also place an energetic shield in front of our hearts and barrel forward while pretending to be fine. It restricts the energy. It's sneaky. Because we're doing the speaking thing, we can think that we've gotten, quote unquote, over the fear and that we are showing up. And we may not be showing up as fully as we could if we haven't actually taken a look at and moved through that fear and harnessed it and channeled it into energy and excitement that does something else. Intend, align, invite. In the first Soulful Speaking episode, I shared the experience of being in an acting class where I chose to allow myself to be seen in that semi-private space, that studio that unleashed me and was a catalyst for nearly everything in my life. And this week, I want to share another one about when I took it out into the world. It was pretty soon after that. It was decades ago at this point. I was auditioning for a role in a play in San Jose at a theater called City Lights Theater. And the play was 5 women wearing the same dress. It was 5 great female roles, 3 of which were within my age range. And I was auditioning my butt off. I was reading one scene after another, and I thought all of that reading meant that it was going great. And then the director asked to speak with me alone. And I'll never forget her words. She said, "Lauri, you're intellectually running circles around everyone here." And on the inside, I thought, woohoo, she's going to offer me a role right here on the spot. And then she said, "But if I'm going to work with you, I need to see your heart." This was not the first time that someone had reflected this tendency back to me. My favorite acting instructor ever, Richard Side, said, "You lead with your intellect." I think he even said, "When your real power is in your heart, when your real power is in your sensitivity." My best ever boss said, "You keep your feelings close to the vest." And I was in the Silicon Valley then, so I was like, I'm awesome. I'm the best jaw tension in the world. And one of my personal favorites, "You're like an egg, a thin, hard shell on the outside and complete mush underneath. And if you tap it just right, the floodgates open up and the mush comes spilling out." Up until I met Richard, I spent my life feeling like I was supposed to keep my feelings close to the vest. I was supposed to hide my feelings. Letting people see my heart felt risky, unstable, perilous. I was not conscious of any limiting beliefs. I wasn't feeling it as a mind thing. I was not conscious of any thoughts at all. It was a visceral feeling of danger, a fear that I might explode or that I would blow other people to smithereens if I let my feelings flow. Can you relate? I'm betting that if you're listening, you can. That day in that audition, Lisa gave me a gift that continues to pay off to this day. She gave me the chance to lead with my heart instead of my mind. And I did. I let the fullness of my heart out to play. I let her see me. And guess what? I didn't explode, and neither did anybody else nearby. In fact, it felt amazing. I would love to tell you that I got the part. I actually didn't. I got rejected. I am happy to say that she personally called me, which we don't often get when we're getting rejected. And when she called me, she said, "I wanted to tell you that I saw you. I saw your heart." It was an incredible audition. And this time it truly is your age with the ages of the other young women that I'm casting. I was looking at you for 2 roles, and based on the oldest and the youngest that I'm casting, you were too old for one of them and too young for another one. Up until this point in my life, when I would hold myself back out of fear of rejection, the kind of grief period was harder and sticky, and it stayed with me for a really long time. And that day, I had myself a good cry when I got off the phone because I'd left it all on the court, so to speak. I had given it my all. I had opened up. I cried. I watched Netflix or probably something from Blockbuster at that point. I ate chocolate for one night. And I woke up the next day still feeling really open, my heart a little bit tender. And then, like the day after that, I just sort of felt healed beyond it, ready to go. That's another way that it didn't make me explode or implode. What it takes to move through that visceral feeling of danger is courage. And you're possibly sitting there saying, there is a part of me that is still terrified. When you choose to step forward in the face of the fear to whatever is your intelligent, loving 5% stretch for that day, that is courage, my friend. People on the outside can see it and recognize it as courage, and the people on the inside often don't. I told you that we were not going to suppress the fear or fight the fear. We are facing the fear. So let's take another moment now and have a conversation with any fear that is remaining for you. What are the thoughts? What is this part of you so afraid of? Maybe picture it like a small child or a puppy or an energy out in front of you. What does it want you to know? What does it need from you? And would the parts inside that are protecting you like to be fired from that job and to take on a different job? And if not, or not at this time, that's okay. It's about taking a moment to turn toward the fear and have a conversation with it and move through it rather than suppressing it or trying to shove it in the closet. Being seen, truly seen, is vulnerable. And if your soul suckers are beating you up from the inside, if you're avoiding shooting videos or speaking on stage, if telling your story calls to you but also seems insane, you are not alone. Being seen is a lifelong path of choice, followed by getting comfortable and integrating, followed by another choice where we stretch. And then eventually we breathe deeper and we integrate and we get comfortable again. And then we make another choice. It's a path that can be walked one step at a time. Your voice matters. You are a unique and beautiful soul, and your voice is needed in the world as part of the choir of humanity, raising consciousness and making the world a better place. And if this is speaking to you, even if your mind is confused, keep coming back for more conversations about how to make speaking a soulful experience.